Penny from Heaven by Jennifer L. Holm. Chapter 6. Uncles, uncles everywhere. My mother always says that even though my father's family is full of men, don't be fooled. It's the women who really run things. It's Sunday, and that means dinner at Nani's house. On Saturdays, I have dinner at home, which is usually a dry pot roast and burned potatoes because Mimi leaves it in too long. I don't know when this started, me going over to my father's family on Sundays. It's been this way forever, and it's always just me, never my mother or Mimi or Pop Pop. My Italian family starts their dinner in the afternoon, so I go over after lunchtime. Everyone's sitting in the upstairs kitchen around the table, and the room smells like lemons. They put the lemons in the decanters with homemade Chianti, and Italian opera is playing on the record player. My Italian family is crazy about opera music. All the uncles are here. Uncle Polly, Uncle Ralphie, Uncle Nunzio, who's married to Aunt Rosa and lives next door in a house that has two stone lions guarding the front door, and Frankie's dad, Uncle Angelo. There's my real uncles. Nani had 6 kids. My father, Uncle Dominic, Uncle Polly, Aunt Teresa, Uncle Ralphie, and Aunt Rosa. Then there's my father's cousins, who Frankie and me still call our uncles. There's Uncle Sally, whose real name is Salvatore, and Uncle Chick, who's in the ironworks business, and Uncle Louis, who raises fig trees in his backyard, and my other Uncle Louis, who everyone calls Little Louis because he's younger, even though he weighs 300 pounds and isn't exactly little. In fact, I think he could stand to go on a diet. Pretty much everyone is related somehow. I don't think anyone's not Italian, except me, and even I'm half. It's times like these that I wish I understood Italian, but they won't teach it to any of us kids because they say it's our job to speak English and be good Americans. Aunt Gina says the reason they don't want us to learn Italian is that during World War II, Italy was on the wrong side, with Germany and Japan. And so the Italians who were in America got in trouble for it. She says that even Joe DiMaggio's father had problems, and if Joe DiMaggio's pop can get in trouble, you got to watch it. And this is why my relatives always speak English in public. But Frankie thinks the real reason they don't want us to know Italian is so that they can have secret conversations. Frankie and me know all the good curse words anyway. There's our golden girl, Uncle Nunzio says. He's wearing a real nice suit, charcoal gray with a thin pinstripe. It looks like something a Hollywood movie star would wear. Uncle Nunzio owns a clothing factory, which is probably why he's such a snappy dresser. He's not handsome like Uncle Dominic, but there's something about him. He has this way of looking at you, like he's looking right into your soul. I don't think too many people cross Uncle Nunzio. Hi, Uncle Nunzio, I say. How are you, sweetheart? He asks. Good. He gestures to a plate of fresh Italian pastries. Eat something. Thanks, I say, and pick up a sloffitella. Sloffitella or pastry with ricotta cheese inside. It sounds funny, but they're really good. Aunt Gina walks in with Aunt Rosa, who likes to pinch me on the cheeks, and Aunt Teresa, who always looks worn out, and our cousin sister, Laura, who's a nun. This is how it is here. People coming and going. There's always a pot of something bubbling on the stove, a glass of Chianti being poured, and macaroni in the oven. They think nothing of playing Italian card games like Scopa or Briscola until 2 in the morning. I don't think my mother has ever even been up until 2 in the morning, let alone had someone arrive at midnight to join a game. I slip away and go look for Uncle Dominic. He doesn't like big gatherings, even if it is family, and he usually hides out in his car. The car's empty, so I go around back and find him with the girls, which is what he calls his dogs. As I look, as long as I've known him, Uncle Dominic's had dogs, and they're always dash hounds. I call them wiener dogs because they look like the wieners you get at the boardwalk. He's got two right now, Queenie 5 and Queenie 6. Queenies 1, 2, 3, and 4 are dead and buried somewhere in the backyard. He names the boy dogs King, but there have only been two kings so far. A couple of years ago, Uncle Dominic built the dogs a pen so they could tear around and play and not get run over in the street, which is what happened to the dead Queenies and the Kings, too. When I get to the pens, Uncle Dominic's talking to one of the dogs. How's my favorite girl? He's saying, like the dog is a regular person. Uncle Dominic talks to the dogs a lot, and he cooks special for them. When you come right down to it, I think he prefers them to people. He says dogs are nicer. Also, they don't care if he wears his slippers. Naughty loves the Queenies too. She's always spraying the fancy perfume Uncle Polly buys her, Taboo, on them. She speaks to them in Italian, and they're probably the only dogs I know that can understand two languages. I thought I was your favorite girl, I say. He looks startled for a minute, and then realizing it's just me, relaxes. Hi, Princess. Taught them any new tricks? Uncle Dominic says wiener dogs are real smart. I'm not too sure about this, though. They can't be that smart if they're always chasing cars and getting run over. I'm working on something, he says. I'll show you when it's ready. Aunt Rosa pokes her head out the door, the sun catching in her thick dark hair. What are you two up to out here? She's my father's youngest sister, the baby of the family. When she was a teenager, she was always running away to New York City. My uncles would have to go and find her and bring her home. The story goes that her brothers got tired of tracking her down, and so they sent their friend, Nunzio, to go get her. And when he brought her back, they were engaged. Uncle Nunzio must be some kind of smooth talker. Just playing with the Queenies, I say. Well, come on, dinner's ready, she says. Go on, Uncle Dominic says. He never takes meals with us, which, believe me, is saying something in an Italian family. He's like a shadow. He just drifts in and out with nobody paying much attention to him, except maybe me. Pretty soon I'm sitting at the long dining room table with the lacy tablecloth that Nani made herself. We're all crammed in, and everyone's talking at once, and laughing and arguing, and it's real loud. Baby Enriquio, who's Aunt Rosa's baby, waddles over to my chair. He's almost 2 and is real mischievous, but he's got the best smile that you've ever seen. He holds his arms up to me and says, carry you, carry you. What he's trying to say is carry me, but he thinks it's carry you since people ask him, you want me to carry you? Come here, I say, and pick him up and put him on my lap. He fishes around on my plate, takes a piece of bread and gnaws on it, and then tries to stick it in my mouth. Eat, he orders. He's Italian already. Frankie and me used to get a lot of attention until all the baby cousins started showing up. In addition to Enriquio, there's Uncle Ralphie and Aunt Fulvia's baby, Gloria, and Frankie's baby brother, Michael, and Aunt Rosa's pregnant again. I like the baby cousins, especially Enriquio, but I hate changing smelly diapers. Dinner is a big production here, and it takes hours. We usually start off with some soup, and then we have macaroni, and then some meat like breast of veal or brocoli, which is braised beef rolls with vegetables and potatoes. After that, there's salad, just lettuce with oil and vinegar, no tomatoes or anything else. Then there's a break, and all the men go drink in a set in the parlor or play bocce ball in the backyard while the women sit around eating raw fennel. Then comes coffee and nuts and fruit and cordials. After that, we'll sometimes have a snack. I start in on the soup, which has escarole and bits of egg. The food I eat here is completely different than at home. Here, food is everything. They even call the food by different names. They call pasta macaroni. At home, we say it's tomato sauce, and here they call it gravy. Why don't you come down to the factory, Penny? Uncle Nunzio says to me. Pick out your fall coat. The new styles are in. I get a new coat every year from Uncle Nunzio. I also get a lot of other clothes. muffs and hats and matching skirts and jackets. I never have to shop in stores like regular people. I just tell Uncle Nunzio what I like, and he has one of the ladies sew it up for me. Okay, I say, thanks. Nani walks into the room carrying a huge casserole dish. Nani and my aunts cook enough to feed an army, just in case people show up, is what they always say. Today she's made lasagna, which is my favorite. Looks good, I say as she puts a large portion on my plate. She always puts too much on my plate and gets upset when I don't eat it all. It doesn't matter how much I eat. I can never eat enough to make her happy. After dinner, the uncles break out their instruments and start playing. There's a trumpet, a mandolin, a violin, and the piano. They're like their own band. Soon, everyone's singing and dancing and loud, and it's a regular party. It's nearly 6 o'clock by the time I leave. Before I go, everyone kisses me goodbye on both cheeks, something we never do in my family. They also slip money into my hands, rolled up $1 bills. I kind of like this tradition. I'll drive you home, Uncle Dominic says. I'm perfectly capable of walking home by myself, but he never lets me. He's almost as bad as my mother. At my house, he idles at the curb, watching to make sure I get in okay. I give him a little wave. I go into the parlor, and for a moment, I think everybody's asleep or something. But they're in the dining room eating dinner. They're so quiet, I hardly know they're there. The next morning, I borrow Frankie's bike and go to Uncle Nunzio's factory. The clothing factory is on the other side of town. It's a big brick building that looks just like every other big brick building. During the war, the factory made uniforms for the military, but now it makes regular clothes, mostly awfully nice wool coats. You can hear the sewing machines buzzing even before you go in. Carolina, Uncle Nunzio's secretary, is sitting at her desk outside his office. She's wearing a stylish suit with a fake flower corsage. Hi, hon, your uncle's on the phone. He'll be done in a minute, she says. I sit on a bench to wait. It's hot inside, real hot, even with the fans going, and I feel sorry for all the ladies at their sewing machines, row after row, sweating away. Most of them are from Italy. You want a butterscotch? Carolina asks, holding out a tin. Sure, I say, taking one. How's your mother? She asks. She and my mom went to school together. She's good, thanks. You look more like her every day, she says. I sure hope she didn't have this hairdo when she was my age. Carolina laughs. Oh, your mother could have pulled off that hairdo. She was the most daring girl I knew. My mother was daring? Honest to goodness? I can't picture my mother like this at all. She won't go out of the house without an umbrella and scarf even on a clear day. Would I lie to you? Carolina says with a laugh. Our senior year, she helped steal our school rival's mascot, a goat. A goat? The door to the office opens, and Uncle Nunzio is standing there. It's the little princess, he says with a broad smile. Hi, Uncle Nunzio, I say. Ask Alberto to come in for a minute, eh, Carolina? Uncle Nunzio says. A short elderly man with gray hair and a tape measure hanging around his neck comes into the office. Alberto's been my uncle's tailor forever. Alberto, Uncle Nunzio says, Penny needs a new coat. Bellissima, he says to me, which I know means most beautiful girl in Italian. Alberto leads me out of the office and over to a workroom in the factory where the coats are stored. There are all sorts of coats. Coats with shiny buttons and fur collars and matching gloves and everything. I spot a nubby wool coat that's cranberry red with a rabbit fur collar and rabbit fur around the wrists. It has a matching muff and hat. That one, please, I say. Alberto has me try it on, but it's a little long in the sleeves. He takes the coat over to a sewing machine and fixes it while I wait. Uncle Nunzio is in his office looking at some papers when I come in, the coat over my arm. Got one, he asks, looking up. Yeah, I say, holding up the coat. Thanks. You take the muff too? I shake my head. I got the hat. Take the muff, he says. It's rabbit, the best. He goes to the door and calls to Carolina. Give Penny the muff, okay? You got it, Mr. Rosati, she says. What about your mother? He asked me. She need a new coat? Sure, I say, although I know she doesn't like gifts from my father's family for some reason. Maybe she's worried about getting more lamb's eyes. We go back to the coat room. He waves at a rack in the corner. Pick something out, he says. I look through the coats. They're all so beautiful, trimmed in mink and rabbit and lynx, but it's the reddish fox stole that catches my eye. It will go with my mother's hair, and it's something she would never pick out for herself in 100 years. The fur gleams in the dim light, and the little teeth of the fox are bared and angry looking, like it's not too happy to be a stole. The coat and muff and hat go in the basket of the bike, but I wear the fox stole draped around my neck the whole way home, feeling like a movie star. I imagine my mother wearing it, looking glamorous, although I'm not sure where she would go. Usually she spends her Friday nights listening to the radio with me and Pop Pop and Mimi. When I was younger, she used to date. They were always good-looking fellas, but they never came back after she introduced them to me. I guess they didn't want kids. Mother hasn't dated in a long time, but I keep hoping that maybe she and Uncle Dominic will get together. He's handsome and he's already likes me, and I'm sure I could work on the living in the car and get him to wear a pair of shoes. When I get home, Frankie's waiting on the front porch. Couldn't take hearing the baby cry no more, he tells me. Baby Michael's real colicky, and I guess no one's been getting much sleep at Frankie's house these days. He sees the first stole and asks, "That your fancy new coat?" It irritates Frankie that the uncles are always giving me presents, even though he knows it because my father is dead and everybody feels sorry for me. It's not for me, it's for Mother, I say. This one's for me. I hold up the red coat. Little princess, he mimics. You'll look like Little Red Riding Hood in that getup. Aw, shut up, Frankie, I say. Frankie follows me into the house. It's dark and quiet. Mimi, Pop Pop, I call out, and then I find the note on the table. Penny, gone shopping. Put the tuna casserole in the oven at 4:30. Love, Mimi. You want to stay over for dinner tonight? Mimi made a tuna casserole. You want to stay over for dinner tonight? Mimi made a tuna casserole, I tell Frankie. He considers it and then shakes his head. Nah, I want to survive this summer. Frankie's brought his baseball mitts, so we go out to the backyard. He wants to practice fielding, and he has me throw him ground balls. After a bunch of grounders, I throw the ball high in the air. I tell ya, it's a crying shame you being a girl, he says. That arm of yours is like a cannon. Frankie's always trying to get me to play on his team. Sometimes I do if they don't have enough boys. I mean it, Frankie says. You got talent. Must be Uncle Dom's blood. Long as I don't end up living in a car, I say. If he was still playing ball, he wouldn't be living in the car, he says. Why do you think he quit anyway, I ask. Beats me, he says. Maybe he wasn't good enough. I gotta use the can. I gotta use the can is his favorite expression. He heard Benny say it, and now he says it every chance he can get. It sounds a lot ruder than tinkle. After a while, I get to wondering where Frankie has wandered to. I walk into the house and hear the sound of water leaking. I go into my bedroom and look up and see water coming through the ceiling. By the time I get to the upstairs bathroom, Frankie's already put every towel on the floor and water's still coming out of the toilet. What did you do? I demand. Nothing, he says. Why'd you use this bathroom? I don't know. I like it. It's bigger, he says. You gotta make it stop, I say. Get me a wrench, he orders, just like Pop Pop. I run downstairs and fetch the toolbox. By the time I get back upstairs, the leak has slowed to a trickle. This stupid toilet, I say. Here, give me that, Frankie says, and grabs a wrench and looks behind the toilet. I think this is the thing that stops the water. You sure you know what you're doing? I ask. Sure, he says. No problem. He twists something, and I hear a crack, and suddenly water starts spurting everywhere. A regular flood. Frankie, I shout. It ain't my fault, he shouts back. My mind is whirling. I can't call my mother because she's at work, and Mimi and Pop Pop are shopping. I'm calling Uncle Dominic, I say, and the minute the words leave my mouth, I know it's the right thing to do. I call the store, and Aunt Fulvia picks up. What's the matter, hon? She asks. I gotta talk to Uncle Dominic, I say in a rush. It's an emergency. Uncle Dominic gets on, and I explain to him what's happened. He pulls up and gets out of his car a few moments later, carrying a toolbox with his slippers and his blood-stained apron from Felucci's market. He's a sight to see. It won't stop, I say. I don't know what to do. Frankie's standing at the top of the stairs. You do this? Uncle Dominic asks. What? Frankie says. It just broke. It's always breaking. Tell him. He's right, I say. When we reach the bathroom, Uncle Dominic takes one look behind the toilet and shakes his head. Stay put. I gotta go to the basement. Frankie and me hold our breath, waiting, and suddenly the water stops. It stopped, I yell. Uncle Dominic comes back up a minute later. What'd you do? Frankie asks him. I shut off the water, he says. Geez, Frankie says. That was it? I could have done that. Frankie, Uncle Dominic says, I don't think plumbing's your calling. Frankie waves his hand, as if I'd want to be a plumber. Uncle Dominic gets down on his hands and knees by the toilet and does this and that. Then he goes back downstairs and turns the water back on. When he comes back up, he says, That should do it. Is it okay to use? I ask. Uncle Dominic flushes experimentally. There's no flood. You're safe, he says. Uncle Dominic and Frankie and me mop up all the water, and when we're finished, it looks good as new. Well, aside from the rugs being soaking wet and all the towels, we drag everything outside to hang on the clothesline. Come on, Frankie, Uncle Dominic says. I'll give you a lift home. Thanks, Uncle Dominic, I say, and I mean it. You saved my life. Anything for you, Princess, he says with a small smile. As I lie in bed that night, I stare at my new red coat hanging on the back of the door. It's beautiful. Probably the most beautiful coat I've ever owned when it comes right down to it. But when I hear the toilet flush above me, I know which uncle gave me the best present today. End of chapter 6.